Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg, making all sorts of noise. This is bad, but it is what it is. So I'm super excited that you're here. I'm super excited that you're joining us for the third week in our Artist's Way project. I have with me Alan Fessenden, Megan Vasilis, and Sergio Giovanni. We're all talking about Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. This is what we decided to do. We decided to go through the entire book and basically catalog the entire process for you so that you can hear how we go through it and maybe be inspired to do so yourself and actually go through it and see what the book and the process, the 12-week sort of creative recovery process that Cameron outlines in the book can do for you. The last couple of weeks, we have done a wonderful, if I say so myself, we did a wonderful, Alan and Megan and Sergio gave such great ideas and advice and guidance and shared of their experience going through the first week, which was sort of the beginning, talking about the basic tools. And then last week was sort of the first step in creative recovery, which was recovering a sense of safety. This week, we're going to talk about week 2, which is recovering a sense of identity. I'm super excited to welcome Alan, Megan, and Sergio. Welcome, y'all. How are ya?
Hey, doing
Hi,
great.
Megan. Yeah. Hi, Isolde. Thank you for having us. Hi, Megan,
okay.
and hi, Sergio.
It's been one of those weeks. I am super excited about talking about this because this is one of those things, actually. This, to me, has been a very challenging week. I've been working like 16, 17-hour days and then finding time to do all of the tasks and the exercises and my morning pages and my artist state, and I've started writing a new book, and things have been wackadoo for me. So I would love to see how you all are as far as how this week was and what you found. Was it challenging? Did you get your morning pages done? How did it go for you? I would love to start with Alan. What are your thoughts as far as how it went and where you are with the process so far?
Well, this week has been absolutely crazy because they've been cutting open my walls. It feels like 2 long weeks since we talked about this, but they cut open all the walls in my apartment to stuff insulation in there because there was like either very little or no insulation in a lot of the walls. So I was just like moving stuff for the guys and then moving it back so that it didn't feel like I was just like living in a chaotic environment. So I was like trying to like make order out of chaos every day. It seemed like they were here like 3 days, but there was always some weird challenge. So it actually took me a while to get to reading the chapter, and I was like, oh my god, I got all this stuff to do, and there's stuff I was supposed to be doing all week, like the affirmations and such that I wish I had read earlier. So that was a little bit crazy, but I wrote most of my morning pages and I went on an artist date and I did at least some of the tasks, I think. So yeah, it's been a challenging week, but
Sure.
I'm excited to be here with you guys and talk more about it.
Awesome. Do you want to share where you went on your artist date?
Oh, sure. I went to see Spider-Man.
Oh, the new Spider-Man movie, No Way Home.
The new Spider-Man No Way Home, and I knew this would be one of the artist dates I went on because a friend of mine asked me to go see the movies a couple of months ago, and I just was not ready to go. And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." Not that it's weird, but I was like, "Okay, maybe." But then I was like, "No, I don't think I'm really ready to push myself to go into a movie theater right now." And I don't know that this week was better, but I was excited about it because I haven't been to the movies in a while. And going to the movies by myself was a very scary thing that I did in college. I remember just being like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm going to the movies by myself, but I want to see, like, I think it was Othello or something. And I was like, oh, it was a really awakening experience for me to be like, oh, I can be alone and enjoy a movie by myself and really have a different experience. And then I did that some years ago in Minneapolis at a little alternative movie theater, and that felt so cool. And so I was just like, excited to be back at a movie theater and just taking myself on this date and sort of plugging in. And I went to the Nighthawk, and it was exactly what I wanted to do. It had that sort of like special vibe to it, and that movie is really, really good, and I'm excited to talk about it to whoever wants to.
I would. Maybe we'll leave it a little time at the end because I loved it too.
Oh, good. Yeah, I thought you had seen it, and I was like, oh, I want to talk to you about this.
Yeah, I had seen it, and it was super cool. Megan, how about you?
Yeah, so this was also kind of a crazy week for me. And I also didn't do my reading until Wednesday. So I missed a whole bunch of days of writing affirmations in the morning pages. But by the time I finally got around to that, it did actually help. And it did. I could see it starting to change how I was approaching morning pages a little bit. And of the 7 days, I did 6 of them, of three pages of morning pages, which I thought was pretty good. And I think the experience was actually more rewarding this time around than before. I think because, especially once I started using the beginning part to really work with the affirmations, I actually found myself spontaneously kind of using them to play with creative ideas that I had. Like I wrote this weird little story one day and like 3 poems one day, instead of just using it as a space to just like write whatever garbage was in my brain and complain about stuff. It was like, so that kind of felt like a shift for me that happened this week, specifically after I started working with those affirmations. So that was really cool. And for my artist date, I kind of just took another drive. I went to this random location I found on the map, and I ended up driving through this really, really creepy forest that kind of looked like the setting of this Southern Gothic novel I was sort of imagining in my head as I was driving. So it was kind of a quiet time, but I think that was really what I needed this week to just sort of escape the chaos of everything else. So that was a good experience too.
Wow, that's really cool. I love that you had where you are right now gives you the opportunity to find Gothic novel settings. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And yeah, the affirmations are really, it's fascinating how suddenly they take on kind of a life of their own, and you have to sort of figure out how to use them. But it sounds like for you it was very natural. That's very cool. Sergio, how about you? What happened with you this week as far as the morning pages, the week that you had, the artist date, all of that stuff?
Yeah, it was a pretty good week on my end. I don't think as wild as some of the weeks you've probably had. I do want to say that No Way Home was great, and I would love to talk about that as well.
We should do a review episode.
For sure.
Very, very emotional film overall. And Alan as well, I know what you mean about the fear that you might have or one might have going to like a movie alone. And I remember a few years back going to a concert, which is one of my favorite things to do pre-COVID, was live music. And I remember going to a concert for the first time alone and how I was nervous and anxious about it, but I had a blast. And it was almost a rewarding experience. And it was awesome because then I was able to go to more concerts on my own and have a lot of fun. So that's cool. I'm glad you got to enjoy the film on your artist date.
Thank you.
As far as my week, I think, no worries. As far as my week, I think the morning pages were probably one of the most challenging things for me. I was able to do all 7 days, which I feel good about. But I'll be honest, the latter half of my morning pages was a lot of me complaining about my morning pages.
Yep.
Like I don't want to be here doing this. I'd rather be doing something else. I'd rather be writing something else. And there were a few times that I did take a break halfway through and then finished my morning pages later in the evening. And that didn't really help as far as, me wanting to do them. But I'm going to continue them and hope that it gets a little better as far as my motivation for them. For my artist date this week, for a few weeks now, I've been thinking about getting a haircut. So I decided this past week that Friday would be my artist date. And so I went and got the haircut, which always feels good. Although I'm a little self-conscious about all the forehead on display at the moment, but still feels good. And afterwards, I went to pick up some takeout And on the way, I stopped inside a dollar store, which she recommends as an example of an inexpensive artist date that someone can have.
Yeah.
I think last week. And so I did that, and I picked up a few things that I needed. And yeah, it felt good for the date overall. Although I will say the NYC winter has been a bit brutal, so that wasn't too much fun.
Oh yeah. I haven't set foot outside since Friday, because
I don't
yeah,
blame you.
because yeah, I have hypothyroidism and my body can't regulate internal temperature. So once I get cold, it's hypothermia city. So I have to stay indoors on those days when it's really hot or really cold. But anyway, so I noticed when we had our writers group meeting, actually, Sergio, that you got your haircut, which looks great, and I think the forehead on display is awesome. I think that shows you have a big frontal cortex, and
It's
that
a great
means,
forehead. Indeed.
Yeah,
And
it's
you do
awesome.
Look great. I
Thank you.
saw it too.
You're all the best. Thank you so much.
So, and the other thing, yeah, we should definitely do like a bonus review episode of Spider-Man No Way Home. And it's funny to me, like commenting on both you, Sergio, and you, Alan, your thoughts about going to movies by yourself. I've been going to the movies by myself since I was 10 years old. And it's a treat for me. I don't have to discuss with anyone which movie to see. I don't have to discuss with anyone where to sit. I just go. And I used to do this when I was working in my 20s. I was working a pretty high powered, high importance job. And they knew that once a week, I was working 90-hour weeks, but once a week, like on Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m., don't try to find me, because I was seeing a matinee of something. And that was it. That was just what I did. And if they didn't like it, tough noogies. So, yeah, for me, seeing a movie by myself, since I love movies so much and other people don't want to always see the movie you want to see, so why not go by yourself? I salute you and applaud you for doing it. For me, this week was tough. Lots and lots of work. On the podcast, I've gotten a bunch of voiceover gigs, which is great. There's a lot of stuff going on. But I did manage to go through the book. I did manage to do, I think, most, if not all, of the tasks. I did my morning pages every day. My artist date was at the library, the New York Public Library main branch, which is one of my favorite places in the world. And I was all set to go to the Treasures exhibit. They have this great exhibit called Treasures, which is all these cool things, like you can see Charlie Parker's saxophone, things like that. And unfortunately, because of staffing shortages and because of COVID, the exhibit was closed. Not one to be daunted. Yeah, I know, I was bummed. But then I went, but the gift shop is open. So I went in and I was looking at books, and I bought myself a Ruth Bader Ginsburg action figure. So I now have that. And I now have a mug that is my new espresso mug, which is awesome. I that's one of the other things I did for myself. I bought myself on very huge sale a little espresso machine. So now I'm making myself espresso every day. And I needed a mug that was short and squat. And I found this mug at the New York Public Library gift shop, which is famous first lines of books. And so I now have this mug as my coffee mug every morning, which is all of the greatest first lines of all the books. You know, it's like 50 first lines. And so I have that now too, and that's awesome. And the thing about the morning pages that I wanted to say, and this is something that I wanted to sort of comment on something you said, Sergio. If you are writing something that you're like, crud, I don't want to be writing these morning pages, blah, blah, blah. I'd rather be writing something else. You can start writing that something else in your morning pages, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to keep writing this frickin' sucks, da 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 da. What if you want to start writing something that is pertinent to a song you're working on or a story you're working on, do it. You know, fill up those 3 pages with that. Nothing wrong with that. And in fact, everything is right with that. And for me, what did I do? I was writing my morning pages and suddenly started writing my next nonfiction book, which is a little weird because I'm in the middle of 2 nonfiction books right now, but this one it came up in my morning pages and I kind of went, I guess I'm writing it. And I'm already like 7,000 words in and show no signs of slowing down. And it began through the morning pages, but I also use the morning pages in another way. When I have things that bubble up from my subconscious that you have to remember to do this, I write it in my morning pages, and I have these little symbols that I've developed. Like if this is an idea to follow up on, I put a little spiral. If it's a to-do item, I put a little hashtag, so if it's a realization, it's a little star. And by the thing that I just wrote that's really cool or that I need to complete or accomplish, I put those little notations for myself so that I can easily go back and find them. And yeah, I know she says don't read them, but this is more like I remember this. I need to remember this, and this is how I remember it, by putting that little thing. So I don't read the entire morning pages. I read the one little sentence that was, hey, Isolde, remember to do X. And that way I remind myself, and then I move on. And the other thing that I got from writing my morning pages this week is I've been spending a lot of time thinking about my website, my sort of professional website, and it was all about how to redo some of the copy in my website so that it's focused more on where I want it to be. And I can talk about that later if we need to, but the point is that when things come up for you, when you first start, you might go, oh crap, she says not to go back and reread them. And I think she's talking about don't reread them so that you don't judge yourself for having written something that isn't quote unquote perfect. But if something you write is helpful to remind yourself, or an idea or a realization, then I say save it. And one of the ways to save it is put a little mark by it so that you know that it's something you want to save. You don't go back and reread the entire thing, but capture that one piece of information that came up that you need to deal with, or that you want to think about, or that you want to do. So it's another way of looking at morning pages that is maybe because I've been doing them since 1997, so a long time, but it might be helpful to you as you progress to think about it in those terms.
I think that's really great advice, Isolde. And I think it's amazing that you've made so much progress on that new book in so little time. It's really inspiring, even.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's practically writing itself because it's stuff I've been thinking about for a long time. So that's really cool. But it's also, now I have to go, okay, stop brain dumping onto the page and figure out what your actual organization of it is going to be. That's because I'm writing, and then I have to go, okay, what are the sections of this book going to be, and I'm going to have to think about that and really get it so that it's in publishing form. So that's the next step for me. But thank you, I appreciate that. Alrighty, so thank you for checking in, and let's move on. I would love to talk about this week. One of the things that she calls the chapter recovering a sense of identity. And, she talks about sort of self-definition as the end-all be-all for this chapter, and also the setting of boundaries. And I would love to talk to get your all thoughts. When she says recovering a sense of identity, what do you think she means, and where do you think you are with that process? Megan, why don't you go first this time, if you have thoughts?
Yeah,
definitely. So I did have a lot of thoughts about this because I really think that she's talking about how we conceptualize our own identities as creatives. And I think for me, I've always had the idea that I'm a creative as long as I can remember. I've always created in a pretty natural way. But what I haven't really been able to own is my identity as a creative who does that kind of maybe who does that in a more I'm having trouble even saying it now.
Podcast, like who is primarily a creative, not just a creative on the side. You can kind of see how I was stumbling over my words there as I was talking about it. But that's what this chapter really brought up for me, that I've always created, I've always thought of myself as a creator. But part of really owning that is understanding where that sort of fits into the bigger picture of your life and where you want it to go, and why you think of it in that way, and like what other factors in your life have contributed to that. So there was really a lot for me to think about in relation to that this week.
Oh, I'm so right there with you. And in fact, I think I talked about this last time, or maybe the first week we met, about this book, in that thinking of I am an artist, sort of owning that identity. I am a creative, I am a writer, I'm a musician, I'm a whatever, rather than thinking of it as something that is a hobby and you do something else as your money earning thing, and the creative part of you gets relegated to when you have time for it. And that's a big thing. That's a huge shift for you. So yay. Even thinking about it is super important. I think that you're getting to that place where you're like, yeah, what does it mean for me to be a creative first? And to me, honestly, and this is a point I think we can all maybe think about and talk about, how much does your sense of identity as an artist, as a creative, move the needle as far as you believing that you deserve to be compensated, you're entitled to success as a creative, in part because you think of yourself as one? What are your thoughts on that? Megan, I know you brought it up, so if you want to go first, and yes, I want to talk to everybody about this, but what are your thoughts on this question? Or do you want to wait until everyone has gone and then we can talk about this question?
No, I have more thoughts. So
okay.
I feel like it's pretty crucial for me to really own that in order to kind of step into that. I feel like in order to create within your highest purpose, you can't do that halfway. At least I can't, you know? If I feel like I'm half-assing it, or that I don't deserve to create things on a really high level, then I'm not going to be able to do it. And I think that's what Morning Pages even showed me this week. You know, once I sort of let go of the idea that I was just sort of passing the time with the Morning Pages, that was when the more creative ideas started coming out for me, because I was starting even in that small way to own it a little bit. And that was when that little piece of it started to started to unlock for me.
And she says that that will happen, even though in the moment you might be in this place of like, doggone it, why the heck am I doing this? And then if you keep going with it, you will see things happen that are going to really surprise you. And I think that's an interesting thing, because it asks for such a leap of faith on the part of the person going through the process. Sergio, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as far as what you just mentioned about her saying that if you just stick with the Morning Pages, then you'll see things happening or things changing. As much as I was complaining about the Morning Pages before, I feel like that is a possibility. And myself recently, I just started writing a new short story that I'm really excited about, more excited than I've been about for a short in a long time. And I'm not sure if I can attribute that to a couple weeks of The Artist Way, or the Morning Pages, but it is neat. And as far as recovering a sense of identity, because I think that was the initial question you posed, I really related to what Megan said about being a creative on the side and how that can be conflicting, and just a lot of what she said. But I definitely identify as an artist and have for a long time. But more specifically, I think for me, it was identifying as a writer, which came to me really late in my life, even though I've been writing shorts and stuff like that since I was in middle school. It really wasn't until I was like a full-grown adult, and I don't mean like 21 adult, I mean like much older, where I was like, yeah, this is what I should have been doing. This is what I was always kind of meant to do, or I think at least. So identifying as a writer, I think, was something that came later for me.
I hear ya, and it's as someone who didn't start writing creatively at all until after I was out of college, I completely understand where you're coming from. That, yeah, absolutely. And you know, and she even says what you said about, I'm not sure if I can attribute this to the Morning Pages. She says that in this chapter even. She's like, and I'm willing to bet that things are gonna start opening for you, and you're gonna go, well, I don't know if that has anything to do with the Morning Pages, ... You know, so it's really interesting that you said exactly what she says that probably you'll say in this week of doing the Morning Pages. So fascinating stuff. Cool, very cool. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Can you reframe the question? Well, I wanted to talk about, Sergio, you thinking about being a writer late in life, and I've been thinking about that myself because I came to New York as an actor, comedian, and I think comedians are writers inherently, but I think I thought of myself as someone who can write occasionally, but it was always hard for me to say I'm I'm a writer. And when you say that to people, you're like, well, what have you written?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you know, some shit here and there.
Exactly.
But then I have to remind myself that I've written 3 solo shows, and I've written several Christmas plays or sketches, like sketch shows. And and then I used to write when I was young, when I was a kid in high school and stuff like that. And then somewhere in there, I think it was like in college, where I just didn't want to write papers for people. I was like, I don't know how to write. Or I was such a procrastinator too. I just would always put it off. But then when I write, I have fun and I enjoy it. And it's like, oh, this is good, but it's so hard. I don't know. It's like a lie I told myself, where writing's not fun or it's hard. And I think it's because it's a bunch of choices constantly. But I don't know. I think doing this process has made me start to think about all the ways that I used to write, and how it's not like absurd for me to consider myself a writer at this point in my life.
Not absurd
even though
at
I
all.
struggle with it.
Sure, but I think that I don't know any artist who doesn't struggle with it.
Right.
You know, with whatever chosen art it is, and it could be multiple art forms, they all struggle with it. It's really, I'm in the middle of watching a phenomenal documentary series on Netflix called Abstract: The Art of Design. And there's an architect whose name I will absolutely butcher if I try to say it. He is Danish, and he said something really beautiful. He said, and I'm just going to have to look it up, doggone it, because honestly, it was brilliant. So brilliant that I'm going to put it out as a meme very soon. But I completely fell in love with what he said. He said, his name is Bjarke Ingels, and he said, the way that you realize your wildest dreams is actually one step at a time. And when I heard that, it blew me away. I was like, yes, absolutely. Why do we put ourselves on this path of thinking that we need to have already achieved our dreams, or that we're not doing it fast enough, or whatever? And in my mind, that notion of, slow and steady wins the race, one step at a time is okay. Don't judge yourself for having taken that next step, whatever that is. So this is my new mantra. The way to achieve your wildest dreams is actually one step at a time. I just wanted to sort of offer that up to you as you said that, Alan, and to all of us listening or here speaking. Alan, what about your thoughts as far as the notion of self-identification as an artist, and also how this week has been for you with looking at that? Or has the week just been too busy and you didn't have time to even go into any of that?
No. Well, so you're asking me, how do I feel about self-identification as an artist?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely feel that I'm an artist, and I think or I feel like I'm an actor, I feel like I perform, I feel like I do a lot of different creative things that's always been my pursuit. And unless I had chosen to be a doctor years ago or years from now, I'll be an artist. I think the rest of my life.
Good for you. Awesome.
But I understand that struggle to say that out loud to people, and that, like as a comedian, it's like, well, tell me something funny. It's like, absolutely not. I'm not here to perform for you. I need to be in my safe space to make my comedy. Thank you.
I love it.
But I do, I feel like rotating, as I said, like identifying as a writer is sometimes weird. Saying I'm an actor, saying I'm a comedian, all these things, they have like little like burst your bubble guys sitting around going like, are you really? What have you done lately? What's your latest success? And it's
I like that they're from like
they're all they're really judgmental in the 40s, and they,
what's your latest success?
what you been doing now, huh?
Oh, it sounds like, his name is Muggsy. Good old Muggsy.
Yeah,
talking to you about what have you done for me lately? I don't know.
Exactly.
Looking for a copper, see?
So, it's funny because this notion of not just self-acceptance, but acceptance of the fact that you are creative and that you're entitled to it. Coming up on the show, I'm going to have Mike Kaplan, who's a comedian, and he started out as a musician and then made the transition. And first he realized, for example, that he had funny songs, and then he was like, oh, well, maybe stand-up comedy is the way I'm going to go. And it's fascinating to me that we sometimes either hold on to a different identity or we try to make both work and then feel like we're shortchanging one or the other. And I feel like love what you're doing while you're doing it. So if you have multiple things that you are creative in, then maybe you're just a well-rounded artist rather than someone who's putting themselves into a position of having to make choices all the time about which kind of art they're going to do. There's something, I think, to be said for thinking about it in those terms. Alrighty, so let's talk. Yeah, I'm especially for anybody who's a comedian, you're going to want to listen to Mike Kaplan's episode. He's phenomenal. He's done Letterman and Comedy Central, and he's had his own Amazon special. He's great guy, lives here in New York City. He's amazing. Nice. But anyway, let us move on. Let us move on to the next question. She talks about setting boundaries, and some of that comes out of actually being, when you're an artist, that means you have to set boundaries for yourself as an artist. I'm a professional speaker. I walk out onto stages and I talk to other people about how to be creative, or I do tarot card readings or whatever. And so people automatically start thinking that I am available to them in whatever form they want, right when they want it. So for me, I had to set boundaries that said, no, this is my time to be creative in whatever way I'm being creative right now. But this is my time. This is my space. This is what I'm doing. And I have to set boundaries with people who otherwise would lay claim to my energy and my time and my attention. And so I'm wondering from all of you, how important is it to you to set those boundaries? And do you need a separate space to create that you need others to respect? Do you need time alone to create? Do you need groups like ours, like our Vegan Writers of New York City? What are your needs regarding setting boundaries? And how do you fulfill / enforce those needs and boundaries? Sergio, would you like to go first on this one?
Sure. As far as boundaries go, I don't think I have anyone in my life that kind of pushes me or doesn't understand that if I need time to myself, whether it's creative or not, that they would kind of, not respect that, fortunately. But I definitely do am someone who needs time to myself and a kind of setting to create. That doesn't mean that I can't write, on a subway or on a lunch break or whatever the case. But I do like to find time to kind of just get in the right mindset. And also, I'm a very social person, but I also can be an extroverted introvert, right? So I'm the type of person who needs time to myself to recoup and just to, get energy for the rest of the week or whatever other activities that I'm planning on doing. But yeah, I don't think I have anyone that kind of imposes on that in my life currently, which is fortunate.
That's awesome. So do you find that like the group that we've created with the writers, Vegan Writers of New York City, do you find that you work well within that sort of group, or do you find that you still need a lot of alone time in order to feel like you're truly being the best creative self you can be? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's the thing with me. I'm kind of a mixed bag. So although I do like alone time, I do like to socialize and to, work and collaborate with other people. So as far as the writing group, I think it's been a really great place for me to learn and to grow, and it was really awesome to meet all of you people and the other people that are in the group that aren't on the series.
Yeah.
And I think it's only been beneficial. So yeah, I definitely like having both areas of being able to have my own time to create, and then also to be able to create with others. And and get feedback and stuff on the stuff that I've been working on.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the group and all of you for that.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, special shout out to Lisa, who just joined us at the writers group meeting, who said she'd listen to this episode. So hi, Lisa.
Hey, shout out, Lisa. Upstate New York.
It's interesting to me what you just said, Sergio, about that it's both, and that's something that I think is advice anybody could take. In that, if you are, for example, a writer, if there are writers groups, seek them out. If you feel like it would help you, right? If you're listening to this and you're going, oh, I feel all isolated, there are lots of writers groups that are meeting online. Depending on where you are, you might have people who are meeting together in person, socially distanced, and all of that. Really think about helping yourself in the way that will help you. So if part of your boundary is you need to open the boundary enough to commit to a writer's group or something like that, then do that. Take care of those needs in a way that feels appropriate to you. And you might find that, like for me, the writer's group is just a delight. And I love working with other people. I love giving feedback and getting feedback personally. Some people don't, and that's cool. If you're much better at writing solo, then do that. But if you feel like you need a group, there's so many writers groups out there, as I said, that are meeting virtually that you can get to, that you can really work through for yourself and really get out of it and put into it something really wonderful. Alrighty, cool. Megan, what about your thoughts on the question of setting boundaries and separate space to create, time alone? What do you think works for you, and what are your thoughts as far as advice for other people who might be going through the same thing?
Yeah, so for me, I really used to pride myself on someone who could write anywhere with no boundaries whatsoever. And I actually wrote an entire novel once just on the metro in DC, going back and forth to work. But that novel's not finished even now, and I think there's a reason for that. And that's for me, I really need a separate, defined space that I have control over. And one of the hardest things for me during the pandemic has been adjusting to a world in which I can't always go to the coffee shop to work, because that used to be kind of my defined workspace, especially when I'm working from home. Like my day job space is kind of my apartment, and then I would go out after work to Starbucks or wherever, or the library, and work there. So for me, what's been really, really important is making sure that I have some separate space in my apartment, even if that's just rolling out like a different kind of placemat and lighting a candle. Sometimes that could just transform the space enough for me that I have that little bit of separateness, and then it can sort of put me in a different mindset for a different kind of work. And I found that in terms of consistency, I'm so much better at that when I actually take care of myself in that way, when I sort of acknowledge that I need that. And I also think it's been really important to me to find community, because it's so hard to maintain that kind of momentum all alone when you have no one to talk to about it. And
for sure.
Yeah, for me, that's also been really important for such a solitary thing. Like writing is so solitary, no matter how many writing groups you're in, it keeps having that touchstone is really, really important to me in terms of keeping me moving on my projects too.
Yeah, and the thing about it for me is it's not just writing, right? You can go to model drawing classes or model painting classes with other artists. You can do a pickup band on a random Saturday afternoon. I started many years ago. I started a drum circle that ended up becoming like huge in Greenbelt, Maryland, where I used to live. I wanted to get better at drumming, so I asked a friend of mine who happened to play the didgeridoo, "Hey, John, do you want to go out and into the woods and you didge and I'll play drums because I want to improve my rhythm?" And he went, "Sure." And then he came and I came and a couple other people came, and before we knew it, the whole drum circle was getting booked to play weddings, and it was wackadoo, but it was really cool because it was born out of a desire for me to become a better musician, but yet I was able to help lots and lots of other people also get access to making music. And it wasn't just drumming. After a while, people brought flutes and recorders and guitars and this and that. And that's another way to do it, is if there isn't something in your area, start something. I gotta tell you, it's so rewarding and wonderful. You'll meet incredible people like Sergio and Alan and Megan, but also you will give yourself and other people an opportunity to make a community where there wasn't one before. And that is what artists do. artists make miracles because they make something out of nothing. And that's something that we all need to remember as rediscovering our creativity and our inner artists, that we are making miracles. Alan, what are your thoughts about boundaries and space to create? I'm just going to keep on moving because otherwise we'll be here until midnight. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't want to be here till midnight because I think I still have to do my yoga today. But, damn, I just remember that. Anyway, boundaries. My thoughts. Well, definitely, I need more space, and it's difficult for me to be aware of that. When I'm aware of that, then I can sort of start to build it. And what I mean by that is, if I know that I need to do something, like I used to go and write at a local bakery for a little bit when I was like working on a little book I was working on that is not finished also, because I just need one more trip back to that bakery. And that gave me the space to be like, this is work time. But I also feel like when I go somewhere that I'm just like waiting to get back, or it's like, okay, how have I done this? Now I can go home. And I don't think of myself as a homebody, but I think I've definitely become one. But recently, the apartment I'm in now has gone through a bunch of like reconfigurations, and now we have this table in the middle of our sort of like living room, and I set that up. I've been able to just sort of like focus on either the artist way or doing one of the projects I'm working on and just actually work if I can get myself set up. But I have a lot of resistance to that, and creating that space, which I guess is part of that boundary situation, is like difficult for me. So I'm trying to institute more boundaries in my life, like set time frames for things and schedules. And I did that, yesterday I went on my artist date, and part of my objective was to do my artist date. So I knew I had to set time for that, which meant when I didn't get moving on laundry in the morning, it meant that I had to do it at night because laundry still had to get done. So I rode my bike down to the movie theater, rode back when it was just starting to snow, and got home and started doing laundry while it was snowing. It was terrible, but I did it. And knowing that those things all had to get done and that they were a priority for me, I was able to do them. Sometimes I get so lost in all the possible things I could do in a given day that I can't choose any of them. And so it's like limiting those things down to what I really need to do is a practice I'm currently trying to create and invest in.
That's very cool. And so much of this is deciding that it's worth it, that you're worth it, that it's worth it. And I think it's crucial and critical that we do that. But there are those, what Cameron calls little snipers, right? The ones who go, oh, why are you bothering? Or, what is there? And sometimes it's other people who will tell you that you should be, that dreaded word should be, doing something else, but sometimes you do it to yourself. Sometimes it's negative self-talk, and I do it to myself. Sure, I get too tired, and then I watch TV or read a book instead of writing or making music or other art for myself.
Yeah.
And I don't do a lot of self-talk about too many of the things that I do, but I do I do about my writing. My writing is still full of negative self-talk. And I guess I want to put it to all of you. What do you have it? Do you do negative self-talk? Are you your own sniper? And if so, where do you think it comes from? How did it start? And what are your thoughts about what we can do about it? Let's see. Who should go first? Sergio. No, Megan. Why don't you go first if you don't mind? Because Sergio went first last time.
Sure. So this definitely hit me kind of hard when I was reading this chapter, because it made me realize that I am my own worst enemy in so many ways. Like,
for sure.
Like, it's not just the negative self-talk, but that is a huge part of it. even working through the earlier chapters when we were kind of working through the affirmations and then having to write down, all the things that come up in your mind when you write down that affirmation, even just saying I'm an artist, all the negative thoughts that sort of just appear spontaneously to counteract that. And I hadn't realized until I started doing that how much that has affected me and kind of held me back over,
for sure,
over my entire life, really. And I think that really that's kind of a process you have to go through if you really want to get past that. You have to figure out like where does that kind of thing come from. I think in my case it kind of comes from a lot of places, and maybe sort of some inherent perfectionism that I have. I mean, I definitely take some of the blame there for that. But yeah, it was actually some really hard, difficult emotional labor this week, just sort of unwinding that and realizing that in so many ways, like I'm my own crazy maker, I'm my own, my own worst enemy in so many ways. Like the first person to tell me that a project I'm working on or an idea I have is stupid is always me. And that's like, why do I do that to myself? Like, why not wait until the thing is at least partially made? Why don't I just why is it so hard for me to just let things flow?
And I think you are so not alone there. I think everybody probably suffers that to some extent. And it's like hitting yourself in the head with a mallet. Why am I doing this? Why am I hurting myself deliberately? It's keeping me from doing what I set out to do. And yet it is such like you said, it's something we have to unwind. It feels to me like it's a bunch of tangled jewelry chains, and you're picking it apart little by little to see if you can straighten it out. And it's something that it looks like a jumbled mess. And what's interesting about it, though, is that if you find that one that you undo, all of a sudden through this bizarre undulation, you start seeing that there's an end to it, that there's an end to the constant, oh, this isn't any good, or oh, this idea sucks, or whatever. And just seeing that it's possible, I think, is really helpful, that it's possible to not have that as a constant barrage inside your own head, which is it used to be a constant inside my own head, but it's only in my head now when I try to write. And that's, since I do so many other creative things, that's not bad.
It's
that's
old.
Pretty good, in fact.
I think that metaphor
Yes.
just loosened my chains a little bit. Like I felt like just hearing it, I was like, oh, there's hope. I can let go. I can not stress so much.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. That makes me very happy. Yay.
You stressed me
Alan,
out when you mentioned the chains at first, and I was like, oof. And then I was like, okay. You get that little piece, and it starts to come undone. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and it works. It absolutely. I actually love untangling chains. In fact, people have brought me chains. These chains got tangled. Isolde, undo them, and there's something really therapeutic and meditative about it for me. So I love doing it. So that metaphor actually holds true for me. I've seen it work many times. Alan, since you had that beautiful realization, I'd love it if you would give your thoughts on this, about being your own sniper, and what that process is for you and how you are navigating it.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, I think I just probably said that, but I definitely will shoot myself down. And I have there's this duality of me, because there's part of me that's just like, everything I do is brilliant. And there's part of me that's like, nope, that's not true. And what I end up doing, and this is why, for one, I really love the group, because I'll go seek some outside validation. Is this something? Please tell me this is something. And what I was thinking about is sometimes I do that until I find someone who tells me it's not worth it. And finally. So sometimes I go, if I can't sniper my own stuff, then I'll seek out someone who will. And that's I think just not a conscious decision, obviously. I feel like I'm ratting on myself. I've seen him do this. Sometimes he'll just seek out someone else who will shit on his idea for him.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? How we'll do that to ourselves. It's kind of like shooting all over yourself. Oh, I should do this. Oh, I should do that. Wait, I need to find someone who's going to poo-poo this idea. Interesting. Interesting.
But the other side of that is if I find enough people who support the idea, then it's almost as if I've already done the idea. And then I'm like, well, enough people know that I've had a great idea and I'll move on to something else. And that's frustrating in a different way, obviously.
Yeah. I said this to my writing students, writers write, professional writers finish. And when I say that in any classroom, inevitably, at least 3 or 4 people go, oh, shit. because you have to remember that's part of it, is finishing is part of the process.
Absolutely.
Sergio, yeah, it is. It just is that there's no question. Sergio, what are your thoughts on this?
So yeah, I think what Megan said earlier about being my own crazy maker really resonated with me. I don't think I thought about that in that way when I was reading over it for this past week's chapter. I've made sure to try my best to cut off toxic people or potential crazy makers, if you will, in the past as I've matured. But I never thought of the notion of being my own crazy maker, or just saying it that way, I guess, because I definitely think I'm my own worst enemy. And I'm trying to get better with that. And also I relate to a lot of what Alan was saying, and this feeling of, after having an idea of thinking like, oh my God, this is amazing. People will love this. But then maybe rereading it or a second later or the next day and thinking, well, this is not good at all, or this is mediocre at best. It's almost like there's no in between sometimes. You can never just think like, oh, this is good, this has potential. It's one or the other sometimes. It's like such a dichotomy with like the feelings that you can get. So that can be difficult for me. And I definitely related to what everyone has been saying about it, but I'm trying to get better with not being my own sniper, as you put it.
That was huge for me, Sergio. Sorry, Isolde. I just had
No, go for it.
A moment where I was like, what'd you say? Like, oh, like it can get better or something like that. And I realized that sometimes I just will make voice recordings all the time. Like, oh, I'm singing the song. Let me just voice record it. Mm-hmm. And my thought is, this is not good, but I like something about this that I can work on later. That I'll be able to work on later. And then I haven't been through them in a while, and last night I was just starting to like label them and listen to them, and I was just like, these are absolute garbage. What are these here for? Yeah. And you just reminded me that I'm like, oh, they're not good yet. They're just ideas, and they need work, and that's why they're there, so I can look back at them and see if I want to work on them. But it just was like this little realization that I've just like stopped judging the process and stop trying to make everything a product is what it felt like. It was like, not everything is a product and not everything's ready for consumption.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah,
that's a great takeaway. Sure, I'm glad I can help.
I really appreciate it. I was like, whoop. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's fascinating though. You can like, oh, this is part of my process, and why would I judge a full salad when all I'm doing is holding a bag of lettuce? You're not ready yet. It's not ready.
Exactly.
You haven't cooked it yet. Whatever. So yeah. All right. Cool. Have we all talked about this, or is my brain fried? I don't remember anymore.
So.
Okay. Awesome. So that we sort of covered this next thing, but I would love to just ask you real quickly, as far as self-doubt, do you know any good reasons for self-doubt? Do you know can you think of any reasons that are like, yeah, that actually is a time to doubt yourself? Is there a time when that's an okay thing to have happen? Let's see. Sergio, why don't you go first this time?
Honestly, the first thing that came to my head was a silly example. I guess that's what I'll share. So if I'm like gonna jump out of a plane and I don't have a parachute, and I'm like, maybe I'm not going to land. Maybe I'm not going to make it. I think that's probably one of the times where it's all right to have self-doubt.
Okay, when you're endangering your life. When I went skydiving, the guy, it was a tandem jump, and he was behind me, and he was doing whatever it is he was doing to attach the two of us together. And I just had this thought, like, what if he didn't attach us right? crap,
Oh my God.
but I had to sort of trust that it was going to be okay. And it was great. And I can't wait to go again. But yeah, certainly when it's a danger, when it's potential danger to yourself, it's a perfect time to have self-doubt. That's a great point. Megan, what are your thoughts? Any times when self-doubt is a good thing?
Yeah, I would say once you've gotten all of the all of the big creative ideas down on the paper, I think that there comes a point in like the creative process when you've sort of moved through like the beginning stages when you're getting all of the ideas down, and then it's time to sort of bring in the editor, which is kind of like the ultimate self-doubter. I think one of my problems is that I turn on that side of my brain too soon, and then I talk myself out of projects as I'm working on them. But I think there's a place for that, and that's, after you're past that beginning stage and you have like all of the good ideas and the bad ideas and the absolutely horrible ideas down already, and then that other side can sort of come in and help you parse them and figure out, well, what here is worth saving and sifting through and processing into something that could be something really good. And I think, yeah, I would call that healthy self-doubt.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, once you're ready for that, then it becomes evaluative and assessing rather than, to me, self-doubt, So it's almost a different definition at that point. It's no longer a should I, but it's a what should I do with this now that I have it this way? And is it okay to continue? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You might, I've written entire books and then gone, no one will ever see this. And that's okay, because I had to get the bad stuff out in order to make room for the good stuff. And that was fine too. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Self-doubt. Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like it has a good place. I hate thinking of the editor, Megan, as a villain in this situation. But I think it's really reminiscent. I was like, oh, it's the same thing I do. It's just like judging the unfinished product. Mm-hmm. And I was like, we got to reframe the editor as a shaper, as someone who's like fine tuning the thing we already did. But I think you're talking about your own editor, right, Megan?
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah. So I was like, oh yeah, just like, oh man, because I feel like we have this villain feeling of the editor, but self-doubt as useful. The thing that came to me was like, all right, if you're saying something and you're questioning if it's like valuable or if it's derogatory, it's going to hurt somebody. I think like that's a good place for it, where it's like, all right, have I really thought about the value of what I'm saying here and the impact it's going to have? And is it the most? Is the value of what I'm saying greater than any potential harm that it may cause?
Right. And again, that's an assessing evaluative thing. And I don't know if I look at it as self-doubt as much as self-evaluation. Like, should I say this? Let me evaluate that. Is it going to be kind? Is it going to be painful? Is it going to be hurtful? Is it going to be malicious? If it's going to be malicious, chances are don't say it, keep your mouth shut. But this is not to say this is what you would do, Alan, but is that actually self-doubt or is that self-evaluation because you're fundamentally a good person?
Well, is self-doubt just a stop on the way to self-evaluation or immolation?
Self-assessment.
Yes. Or self-assessment.
I guess. Or self-immolation. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think that's the wrong word, but like, like just self-destruction.
Don't set yourself on fire. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and if it's just a stop on that journey, as a check-in, that's one thing. But I guess to me is your sense of self-worth at risk? That's where self-doubt starts and self-evaluation stops, as far as I'm concerned, right? If your self-worth is at risk, then that's a problem.
Because of
if
the
your
self-doubt?
self-worth is not at risk, exactly. Because if you're evaluating whether or not you should do something or say something, or whether or not a piece of art that you've created is something you want to go forth on, it's thinking it's crap, for example, doesn't necessarily help you or the piece of work unless there is something functional about it. So if it's making you feel like complete crap for having done it, for having made this piece of work or whatever, then it's self-doubt. If it's self-evaluation, you're looking at it, you're assessing it, you're more objectively seeing whether or not it has merit, then that's a different thing. And that's why I asked the question the way I did, because I personally, I'm like, yeah, I tend to lead first. I tend to go, you know what, I'm going to jump in both feet and either I'll sink or I'll swim. But I have a very specific relationship with the term rock bottom, for example. To me, rock bottom is a beautiful thing because it's for the first time you're standing on solid ground, right? You're not falling, you're not afraid, you're not anything, because you're at the baseline. And the same thing with self-doubt. Self-doubt causes all sorts of demons to rise up. But if you finally go, you know what? No, I'm not going to doubt myself. I'm either going to take a stand or I'm going to walk away. That's a much stronger position than one that's full of self-doubt, because that's weak, and it's not just vulnerable, it's weak. And that to me is something that I'm not comfortable with as a definition or as something that I would do. I tend not to doubt myself, just because if I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to make them be marvelous mistakes. They're going to be huge. So one way or the other.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because what it's making me think is that, like, self-doubt is this moment of fear, right? It's like self-doubt is part of fear, and it's saying, like, stop. And then you have to think, like, well, why am I stopping? And I think what we tend to do is be like, stop. We just say, like, oh, it's no good, or we lean into, like, all the negative aspects of it. And I think your idea to just go into evaluation, or, like, what is this doubt coming from? And this is a lot of, like, what the work is. Like, where is this coming from? Or why is it doing that?
Exactly.
And in that moment, it can be like, well, what is this about? Are you afraid someone's going to laugh at you? Are you afraid that you haven't edited it enough? Or are you, like, what is the fear? You're afraid, like, that it sucks, you know, like, what is that? And then, like, that analysis can maybe lead you to a more productive moment, being like, oh, actually, I don't like this. I'm moving on from this project, and I can let it go now because it's not good, and I'll move on to something that I really have been wanting to do, and this has been distracting me from, possibly. I don't know.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I agree. And that's the thing. There are such things as healthy fears. Are you in danger? That's a healthy fear. But telling yourself that you're in danger because what you've written might be crap, that's not a healthy fear.
Right.
Right. There's the difference. And that's the distinction that I'm making. It's like, yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're walking down a dark alley and there's somebody coming up behind you and you're not sure whether or not they mean you harm, absolutely, it's a perfect time to have a lot of fear. You know, if you're not sure, then make sure, figure out. But if what you're doing is making yourself not do something creative because you're afraid someone else will judge it, well, screw them. You know, that's kind of where I am with this. It's like, you're telling a story no one else will tell because no one has your experience or ideas. Then you know, I don't often cuss on this show, but fuck them if they can't take a joke, right? It's an important thing for me. Like, we have to be very aware of how often we sabotage ourselves as creatives, as artists, as people.
Absolutely.
We have to be aware of how often we do that. And the more we can help each other not do that, the better off we all are going to be, I think. So that's my thought on it. Alrighty, cool. So
I like that we have a quota of one F-bomb per episode now.
Well, if you can F-bomb, you know, you can do that all you want. All I have to do is remember to put the little explicit thing on the thing. Or the FCC comes after me and shuts down the podcast, which I would prefer not happen.
Oh, me too.
So, yeah. Thanks. So yeah, this is something that is important because of that sense of safety, right? We're talking about this sense of safety and sense of self-acceptance. And one of the things that Cameron says in the book is creativity flourishes when we have a sense of safety and self-acceptance. And I guess I wonder how those things help us be creative, especially when so many artists are, quote, mad, you know, and many of us think that in order to be great artists, we must be at least a little bit mad. I don't think we do. I think we need to be as healthy as possible so that we have energy and stamina and purpose to make our art. But there is this notion that great artists are a little bit mad. So I'm wondering about that for you. Do you think we need to be safe and self-accepting in order to make our best art? Or do you think that element of the unknown and perhaps even danger is what's more necessary as far as being creative and as far as identifying as an artist? Sergio, would you like to take that question first?
Sure. I don't think that sense of danger is necessary to create good art, but I think it can.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can help if you take a risk or do something different out of the norm. As as long as you're being safe, then I think that can definitely help with your creativeness. But I do feel like that over time, this idea of all the best artists are a little mad. I feel like that's kind of a romanticized kind of notion, right? That has happened, and yeah, I disagree with that as well. I don't think that that's necessary.
Awesome. And Alan, what are your thoughts?
Well, you just made me think of somewhere in here. She says, we're trying to work towards going sane, and going sane can feel like going crazy.
Yep, that's exactly the quote, and that's exactly, I have that in this thing to talk about. But yes, please talk about it.
Well, I was just like, it just blew my mind. I was like, well, how do you know which one you're doing? I need to give a moment, because it feels like you're sort of shifting the world, and I think, like, I don't think artists necessarily have to be mad, but I don't think that being mad prevents you, or it makes you well, obviously mad artists exist, right? And
Sure.
so
True.
we all accept it, I think. So what I'm trying to say here is that finding that sense of safety is a place is good, obviously, for us, because we'll be able to create, right? And so we're like, if you're a locked artist, you want safety. If you're a mad artist and you're just creating, that's like, it seems to me like necessary art. Like, it's just like you've tapped into the flow, and that's like where you're getting all your energy from. So you're just recycling it back out, which can be amazing, but it sounds exhausting. And I think finding that balance of like, how do I be an artist that lives in the world and maintains the relationships with my family or friends or my sense of the world, then I think you do have to create those spaces and make yourself sane enough to understand. Did I just mute myself? Sorry about that.
Nope, you didn't.
Oh, good. Then I'm glad I didn't. I retract my apology. Did I answer the question, or did I just go all over the place?
No. I think you did, and I think it's important to think about in those terms. You know, it's perfectly okay to start thinking and not know whether or not you're crazy or sane, as long as you're on a path to understanding yourself better. You know, there are some people out there who are insane, and there are lots of creative people are insane, but there are also lots of creative people who are not insane, and that is perfectly fine. And I think one of the things that's sort of my soapboxes is that you can be perfectly happy and still make incredibly amazing and provocative and incredible art. So I don't think you need to be certifiably part of the DSM-5 at all. You know, you can absolutely be completely happy and well-adjusted and still make incredible art that moves people and inspires people and does whatever. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, you don't have to be a drunk or a drug addict or a maniacal maniac. You can do good art and be happy, and I think that's important to remind people, because there's this underlying thing that she also addresses early on about like this fear that you're going to be a crazy person or or whatever other casualties may fall you if you try to become an artist.
Yeah, I forget who it is who has that quote that says, be orderly in your life so you can be something like amazing in your art or something like that. And I absolutely agree with that. Alrighty. Sergio, what are your thoughts on that question of... I didn't even forget even the question. Hang on. Self-acceptance and sense of safety.
I think I went over how I felt about that.
Oh, did you? Okay, I'm sorry. Megan. Yeah, sorry. I'm starting to get a little lost about who, because I keep wanting to have everybody take turns going first, and I'm getting a little lost as far as who's gone and who hasn't. So Megan, sorry about that. Please give your thoughts.
Apologize.
No worries. I feel like the kind of myth of the crazy artist is sort of a really romantic idea that for me really doesn't work. It's never worked. I think as someone who has a lot of anxiety in my real life, the only way I can really create consistently and create good work that I feel good about is to make my life as really as safe as possible. You know, I have to create my little zones of creativity. I have to have things happen on a really specific schedule. I have to have blocks of time in the day when I'm doing my creative work. Like I have to have boundaries and boxes around everything that I'm doing. Like it really has to be as sane as possible for me, or I really just can't function. And I think I'm not the only writer artist who works that way. I think for a lot of people that idea that you sort of have to be a little bit crazy to really create good art can really hold you back, because you know, I think in some cases it can even stop you sometimes from getting help if you have, you know, a mental health issue and you're worried that it will affect your creativity, which she also touches on, you know, earlier in the book. And I was thinking about that kind of also in the context of my anxiety too, and like how much, you know, creating those safe spaces for my art really does sort of free me from that extra level of anxiety that can sometimes hold me back from really, really going there in my work.
Absolutely. And it led like is it Camus who said it? I forget. You know, if you're orderly in your life, you can be wild in your art, and there is something really powerful to me about that notion and that idea. So yeah, absolutely. Now, having said that, I want to turn the tables on all of us a little bit and talk about other people doubting us or being toxic. What she says is that a lot of times the most toxic people to be around are other artists who are still blocked, who will critique you, who might make you feel like crap about what you've done. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's true? And how, if it is true, how can we navigate and negotiate those relationships? Some of them you might want to leave. Some of them you want to keep or you can't lose because they're like family members or whatever. How do you navigate those people in your life who are your inner critic personified? What are your thoughts? Megan, why don't you go first this time?
Yeah, so I think that when we have people like that in our life, the best thing, I think the way I've dealt with it most effectively is to just make boundaries really clear around them. Like especially if it's a relationship that I can't leave or that I don't want to leave. It's knowing like when it's safe to share with this person and when it's not safe. And sometimes you have to learn that the hard way. But for me, it is really important to make sure that I know what the boundary is, even if I don't explain that to the other person. You know, maybe I just won't talk about this project with them, or maybe I just, you know, make sure that when I'm working on my creative work or whatever, it's not like nothing I'm working on is really where they can see it. You know, like yeah, I mean, I think that was something I ran into a lot when I was living in DC, where I had a lot of friends who, a lot of them were really creative, but a lot of them were really blocked, and they were really almost kind of like upset when I was really working on trying to move past that and taking on more bigger creative projects. And I kind of learned that I had to function that way. You know, a lot of these people I really cared about, and I didn't want to just cut them out of my life, but I did sort of have to make that creative part more mine and less something that we really talked about as a community.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that that there are choices to be made, and you can be very practical about it. You know what? This person is just not someone I can talk about this with, and that's okay. And then the key is to not feel bad when they want to talk to you about it, and you're like, actually, let's talk about the weather, and that's going to be fine. So, because some people, I guess, to me, haven't earned the right to get to those vulnerable parts of me. And that's okay too, especially if I'm in the beginning phases of whatever project it is. Alan, what are your thoughts?
I'm trying to think of Well, I was reading the crazy maker aspect of this, and I thought, oh shit, I'm the crazy maker. I'm the one who messes with everyone's stuff, and I probably have spent a lot of time as a blocked artist trying to find my way back here. That's why I'm doing this now, to put me back on course. And and I think like it can be tough. Like, I definitely have people who have, I guess, not loved my ideas, but what I generally find is most frustrating to me is when they don't understand the idea, and then they just sort of, and then there's just kind of like a nonplussed attitude, and it's like, I don't know what you're doing here or something, and I'm just like, oh, either I need to explain this better or it's a garbage idea, and sometimes I just need to explain it better, and other times I can't, and so
and that's okay.
I'm stuck there. But yeah, you definitely have to watch out for those people. I think I was embedded with them. There were like a lot of them in my life for a while, and now I don't have them. It's a different time, and I feel a little more sane, I guess, but also I'm missing the chaos because I like that stuff.
And chaos can have its place as long as it's controlled chaos, like as long as you know when to stop.
Yeah.
And that's important. Okay, and again, I'm lost because I was paying too much attention to what you were saying to remember whether or not Megan and Sergio, you've talked about this. Help?
Yep, we talked about it.
Okay, good. So now, because honestly, my brain is so full of the ideas that I'm forgetting where I am.
I wanted to say, sorry, one other thing, because I was thinking about this vice versa, or the opposite side of that versus people who are negative. And there's definitely been people in my life. I had a friend in college. Her name was Kara, and she watched me start a theater company and finish college and start a theater company. And at the time, I was just kind of like, I got to do this. This is what I'm doing, and it's no big deal. And I was like, I need to make my life a success now. Now that I've started a theater company, I've done these plays. And then she would be like, "You're doing so much." I think she had moved to Seattle at the time. She was like, "You've done all of this," and she had to like sort of point me back to look at what I had done. And once I could like look back instead of like in the rear view, but look back and fully turn around and look at it, I was like, "Oh right, I was doing stuff, and I was actively living my life in the field I wanted to live it." And you're right, I was successful, and I think like I needed more of those people in my life.
And I think that's part of it, isn't it? It's like there might be a plethora of toxic people or crazy makers, as Cameron calls them, and there might not be as many cheerleaders or supporters, but the key becomes finding the people who are, whose role may not just be as your supporter, as a collaborator, as a cheerleader, but also as someone who's there going, yay, good on ya, keep going. And there's something really positive about that, as opposed to someone who goes, oh, that's what you're doing? Oh, okay, fine. And that's a different story. And when we're in this place of vulnerability, there's a shift, I think, that takes place that goes from it's easier not to create to it's easier to create. That's one of the things that Cameron talks about in all of this, is that it becomes easier in many ways to write than not to write, to sing than not to sing, to audition than not to audition, because you accept about yourself that you are this person. Like you said, Megan, early on tonight, that you are the person who is a writer, that you are the person who does work on this part of your art/craft, and not working on it becomes something that makes you, that's an agitative material, as opposed to working on it becoming something that's anxiety provoking. So there's something to be said for that, and I personally love that. And I love the notion that the process, not the product, is the focus. And Alan, you mentioned that earlier. It's so important to me to know that when I'm in the process of creation, I don't think of it as doing, the great creator's work or whatever. That's not where I go with it. But being in the process of creating is this wonderful, miraculous thing that I really appreciate. What are your thoughts on that as far as being easier to write than not write, or sing than not sing, and the process versus the product? Sergio, would you like to go first on this?
Sure. I think it's really important to think about the process, or focusing on the process versus the product. And for me, that really comes down to being present and trying to be more present and pay attention to what you're doing in the moment, which was a big focus on this week's chapter. I'm not sure if I'm getting ahead of myself, if that's all right to talk about.
It's all right to talk about anything.
Awesome. So I think that's, for me, like focusing on the process as opposed to the present really comes down. As opposed to the product, really comes down to being present. It's a lot of alliteration going on there. And for me, I really like that she focused on paying attention to yourself and how important that can be. And there's a few things she said that really stuck out to me. And one of them was, in times of pain, when the future is too terrifying to contemplate and the past is too painful to remember, I have learned to pay attention to right now. And she also says, in regards to finding it difficult to be present, that we spin our wheels and indulge in daydreams of could have, would have, and should have. And that's something that I just do all the time. I daydream a lot. I'm a Pisces. We kind of meant to do that. I don't know if people believe in that sort of stuff, but that can be real difficult. And I think when Alan said that, and how you reiterate about just focusing on the process versus the product, how important that is. And really that means, and I'm getting redundant now, but just be present and appreciate what you're doing, and that you're actually doing something. Even if it's just, something that's not necessarily creative, it can be taking out the laundry and stuff. But I think just allowing yourself to be more present will help with your creativity in the long run. And I'm sorry, maybe I was rambling a bit. I don't know if that answered.
No, it's good.
No, it's good. And we were going to get to attention, so you just brought it up a little bit early. That's all. And Megan, what are your thoughts on that part of it? If you want to talk about the attention part too, that's great. If not, the question that I'm asking about being easier to write than not to write, or sing than not to sing, because you're involved in the process, and what it does for you as an artist.
Yeah, I think for me, when I have those boundaries set up and when they're functioning for me, that's when it really becomes easier to create things than to not create things. And also, it resonated with me what Sergio was talking about, because I really think that attention for me kind of dovetails right into that. When I'm really able to tune into the world around me and notice those little things that sort of bring that sense of delight that Julia Cameron was talking about in this chapter, when I can actually pay attention to that stuff, that's when it's so much easier for me to tune out all of that background noise of like the me being a crazy maker, like all of that sort of falls away, and I can just really focus on the stuff I want to be making and how specifically I want to be working. So to me, it really does tie in, and it's definitely been important to me figuring out my process.
Cool. It makes a lot of sense. And that's the thing though, it all ties in to itself. When you have the boundary set up, crazy makers won't bother you as much. And we're going to talk about crazy makers in a second, but when the toxic people, we'll call them that for now, they can't get in because you have boundaries until you're willing to open the door, unless you're willing to open the door. And setting that up starts feeling weird to us because we feel guilty that we aren't, or at least I do. If I don't give in to the crazy maker, for example, if I don't give in to the toxic person when they want my time and energy, I feel guilty. And that's a problem for a lot of people, that there's this innate guilt of, oh, this person needs me, so therefore. But if you are doing what you do, Megan, and which is, set those boundaries, be present and able to pay attention to what's in front of you, you don't get derailed. And that is a beautiful thing. And congratulations on that. That's wonderful. Alan, did you talk about this already or no?
No, I haven't talked about it.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Y'all are going to have to just remind me, because my brain I'm too full of ideas and not full enough of paying attention to what's actually happening in front of me.
Oh, no.
All right, Alan.
That's funny that's the problem you're having right now.
I know.
Pay attention.
Being filled with lots of ideas is also a good problem, right? Some would say.
Yeah, it's a positive problem. No, it's not that I'm filled with ideas as far as like, oh, I'm going to go write this book. It's more like I'm filled with ideas as you're speaking to talk about, to respond to, and then I forget who said what because I'm so present in what's going on. But anyway, Alan, thoughts?
Well, we appreciate you being present.
Thank you.
And I'm also
That's
trying to be
sweet.
present.
Thank you.
I just had this image of me circling my desk, and like there's a gravitational pull towards it. I'm sort of waiting for that moment to feel like it's more fun to write. It's not even a desk. It's just like the table in the middle of the room. And when I get there, yeah, it's better to write than just stare at the screen, I think.
For sure.
But or do anything else, because then I can't write. But I just think I lost my train of thought. What I was thinking was, oh my god, better to write than not write. I wanted to mention this, right? So this interesting thing happened to me in my morning pages, and on 2 different days, 2 different things happened. And the one reason I want to mention this now is because one of the things was, at the end of my 3 pages, there was a voice that was just like, write a little more. Just keep writing a little bit. And I was like, why? And I was just like, just keep. I literally wrote like just half a page more, but I was like, all right, that's good. But I was like, what is it you want me to write more? Why is this happening? I did my 3 pages. I should be free from this. And then the other interesting thing happened, which I think that was today. That might have happened today. And then a couple days ago, I was like on my last page, and then I just started sort of writing as my dad, and who passed away like about 8 or 9 years ago. 9 years ago, I think.
Wow.
And I just started writing from his voice, and I was like, I knew I was in control of the pen, and I knew that I was writing it, but I also felt like he was there, and if anything, I was just like editing his message.
Wow.
But it was just like,
amazing.
What's that?
That's amazing.
If not if you know my dad, this is exactly the type of thing he would do. Just no, I'm just kidding. No, it was cool. And
He'd just come back from the dead and take over your pen.
Oh, no.
That's the kind of guy he is.
I think he told me to like
Alright.
send love to my family and just let me know he loved me or something like that. I should see if I can read
That's
it.
lovely.
But that was another thing that just like, I was like, what is this? And I'm like, I'm just gonna indulge this, whether it be fantasy or real. I'll just like let it play out however it plays out. And it's kind of like a sweet moment for me. But that was my little discovery in the morning pages, and then today made me feel like, okay, maybe it's time to do a lot more writing than I've been doing. So maybe I'm getting there.
Write just a little bit more. That's awesome. Good for you. And that's, according to Cameron, that's exactly what she's talking about, is that transformation from I would rather not be writing to I would rather be writing,
Yeah.
or I would rather not be singing to I would rather be singing, or whatever it is. That's awesome.
Great.
But let's talk about the other side of that coin, when the people in your life aren't supportive, aren't showing up in your writing and going, hey, you can write more. What about those crazy makers? And what she defines them as charismatics. They're people in your life who, long on problems, short on solutions. They have this incredible sense of when you're just starting to work on something, and they're asking for a favor, or they need you to listen to their problems, or they need a ride to the airport, but they have this innate sense of calling right when you're like, I'm working, this is great, I'm this thing, and I'm really excited about and then the text comes through and I can't believe that Josh left me, bada. And all of a sudden you're like, no. So those are the people. They get in the way of you making your art is the best way of saying it. And in the book, she sounds pretty bitter about them, like she's had more than her fair share, because they do. The whole point of her definition of crazy makers is they'll take a lot of your time while promising it's only going to take a minute. They're going to need for you to do things for them, but they're always too busy to do stuff for you, and nothing that ever goes wrong is their fault, is what she says. And they don't have any desire to pay attention to your needs or your deadlines. They just want whatever they're going through to be the thing you focus on. And so I'm wondering what your thought of that is. Do you have any crazy makers? And if so, what are some strategies and techniques to keep them from derailing you? Megan, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, this section really made me laugh because she just sounds so angry throughout the whole thing.
She does.
Like I just can sense that she's had so many of these people in her life. I think I've actually been really lucky in that I really am mostly my own crazy maker. I don't have a whole lot of people in my life who have actively worked against me in terms of accomplishing creative things. But I have found that when that sort of thing does come up with other people, the best thing I can possibly do is just make sure that I know in my own mind, that I have my priorities clear and that I know how to draw boundaries with that person. And that's not always as easy as just saying, okay, here's the boundary. But I think that it's crucial really to, getting through those situations and figuring out how to still accomplish stuff despite this other person interfering. I have to know where the line is, and I need to know really exactly how much time I'm willing to devote to this person. How important is this relationship even, how much of my time is worth digging into their whatever quagmire they've sort of created, sometimes if it's someone I really care about a lot, that can be some time, I might devote to that. But if it's, not a situation like that, then I think it's totally fine to, back away as much as possible and just try to reclaim more of that space for yourself. And I actually think that's maybe what the artist dates are kind of about. It's sort of teaching you to make time for you, to create that space for you, no matter how much other people try to claim that time and take it away from you. There's this time that's just for you and your creativity to have that input space. And that I think is really important.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Listen, my dog will just sleep soundly when I'm just not doing anything, sitting there. And the minute I get up to
your dog is your crazy maker.
What's that?
I said your dog is your crazy maker.
She is kind of a little bit right now. I hate to talk mean about her because she's the best. But whenever I get up to sort of start to work, that's when she wants to play. She's like, okay. She's like, now we're doing stuff. And I'm like, no, not us. Me, now I'm okay. Let me throw you the ball for a little bit. You need to go for a walk. Let's do this. So right now she definitely serves that purpose. And I think she's a good enough dog that if I ignore her, she'll go figure out something else to do for a little while. And she does wait patiently when I do that. But there is this feeling of like some sort of codependency in this situation, right? Where like it is maybe two locked artists or something that are struggling, and this feeling that one of them is going to start creating is feels like they're leaving, feels like they're gonna go, and there's a fear. I think I'm being very sweet to the crazy maker because I also feel like I've lived that part. But like there's this moment of like, oh, you want to go do other stuff because I'm not good enough, I don't fulfill you, and that's probably an unhealthy relationship. But that seems what the crazy maker doesn't seem like a healthy relationship. So I think there is probably an element of that, and it's both a practice to support yourself and to support others. I think because I think as an artist, you can look at other people's success and think like, oh, that threatens me, or that means I can't do it, or I should be that person, or whatever it is. And I think finding ways to lift others up, and I think you're really good at this, Isolde, as an artist, to bring other artists in and
wow, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And just like bring them into a space of creativity and root for them is not common. It's something I always strove to do is when I was directing or coaching and stuff like that. I wanted to bring people up and lift them up and find and move more people up into the ranks of being comfortable with themselves and performing. But I also know that I felt, jealousy and bitterness towards other people, and I probably haven't supported people in the ways that I could have by, just seeing shows or something like that. Or nice notes. I don't know. There's ways to do it, and I think I could have done that more, and it might have been good for me to just root for people instead of feeling that negative space of want, of lack that I was living in at that moment.
That's incredibly self-aware of you, and thank you for your kind words. But it really, that's very self-aware, because it is. Listening to you, I'm like, yeah, there is this time in everybody's life when you see people who even, if they start sort of after you, but then they move past you, and you're going, wait, I've been doing this longer. What's up? And there's, but at the same time, it's like the way I've started looking at it as I've gotten older is, well, if they can do it, I can do it. That's sort of a it's possible kind of situation in my head nowadays. It wasn't always like that, but that's where I go with it now. It's like, they can do it. That's awesome. That means it's possible. That means that I'm not spitting in the wind. There is a method to this, and there's something really powerful about that, I think. Sergio, why don't you go next on this?
Sure. Just want to say thank you, Alan, for sharing that side of perspective.
Of course.
It sounded like it was coming from a vulnerable area, so I really appreciate you sharing that.
Whoops.
It was really cool of you. And also, I'd never thought I'd say this, but I'm a bit jealous of your crazy maker, as in the puppy. That sounds adorable.
Oh, yeah. Come visit anytime.
Yeah, maybe when you take her for a walk, that could be cool. As far as crazy makers go, I feel like reciprocity is a really, really important thing for me. One of the most important things for me. And so I think someone's effort or energy that they're giving you is the kind of energy I would return. So as I've gotten older, I've been able to cut out toxic or negative or unreliable people from my life, or potential crazy makers, as I mentioned before. So fortunately, I don't have that issue now. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. I'm surrounded by such wonderful people and artists like yourself, like this group. And I have a few friends who are creative that I collaborate with. A few close friends and I created a YouTube channel a few months back called The Multiverse Odyssey. Sorry for the shameless plug, but we're on YouTube. And yeah, we've been collaborating, and I just am very grateful, I think, at the moment to say that I'm not dealing with any crazy makers in my life.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you. And if you get me the link, I'll put the link to your YouTube channel in the show notes page. It's great. And it's you've gotten to a place, however you've done it, you've gotten to a place where you don't have any crazy makers. Amazing.
Other than myself, that is.
Well, and you know what? And that's something you can work on, right? That's the point, is that's not something you have to set boundaries on with other people. Mm-hmm. It's something that you can work on for yourself, and with our support. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this whole thing, is to go through the process together and to support each other as we do. Megan, what are your thoughts?
I actually think I covered this one already, didn't I?
Oh, maybe you did. My brain. All right, cool. Let's move on. Yeah, I see. This is why I should never be up this late. That's part of my problem. This is way past my bedtime. Okay, so yeah, I mean, and the thing about crazy makers, I think, is that the idea, the notion of crazy makers keeps coming up later in the book, and a lot of it is that you doubt when you have a crazy maker in your life, you start doubting whether or not their problems are more important than your problems, right? So you're like, wait a minute, I was working on this thing, but this person has just texted me and they're having all this drama, and do I ignore them, or do I tell them I can talk to them later so that I can keep focusing on what I'm doing, or do I stop what I'm doing, stop my art, stop my creativity to focus on them? And that is the key thing that I think has to, if you've got a crazy maker in your life who does impact you this way, that's a key thing you have to look at, is how often do you stop what you're doing in order to focus on their drama, right? I said this to... I put it up on Facebook or wherever, Instagram, years ago now, and basically it's a drama-free zone. Like, I only want my drama in books, movies, TV shows, and theater, not in my life. So if you've got drama to bring me, somebody's head better be on fire. That's the kind of drama that, I honestly don't want people to be like, oh, my life sucks and you have to help fix me. I spent many years doing that for people, and now I don't do that anymore unless you pay me a lot of money. So only drama on stage or in movies, TV shows, or in books. And people got mad at me for it. And this comes up in later chapters in the book, but I had a lot of people call me a selfish bitch because I refused to give up what I was doing in order to participate and fix their drama. And if you have a crazy maker in your life, I'm here to tell you, I'm with, can I get an amen? This is something that you need to be aware of, is that if people start calling you selfish, you are on the right track. Bear that in mind. No, seriously, it becomes important later on, because this process is all about setting up those boundaries. And often if you don't have any boundaries, people who are used to you not having boundaries and therefore being there for them start thinking you are being really selfish when you set up those boundaries. Be prepared for that so that you understand that that is what's happening when it happens. And that's one of the things, is that when those good things start happening, we start getting skeptical about it. We start saying, oh, maybe I am a crazy, selfish bitch. No, you're just taking care of yourself, right? So we, as artists, as recovering artists or discovering artists, however you want to look at it, have to start looking at when those good things start happening because we're taking these actions, and then allow the skepticism to fade away so that what Cameron calls synchronicity can work in our lives. And I would love to hear your thoughts about this notion, because it dovetails beautifully into what Sergio was saying earlier about attention, that to be there, to allow ourselves to be present and to pay attention to what is happening in front of us, we have to leave skepticism at the door. What are your thoughts on that? In fact, Sergio, if you don't mind talking about that first, that would be great.
Yeah, I think, just going off of what I said earlier, I think being present and paying attention to your surroundings and yourself is really important. Another quote that was in there was by the poet William Meredith, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it said that William Meredith has observed that the worst that can be said of a man or person is that he or they did not pay attention. And for me, as I mentioned in previous episodes, mindfulness is very important to me. Mm-hmm. And I know, like myself, some can suffer from dwelling on the past or worrying too much on the future. So I like that she emphasizes enjoying your presence in the present. And for me, it comes down to just trying to be mindful. And I think that's a very important thing for everyone, not just creatively, but just in general.
Absolutely. That's why I have a day of the podcast devoted to mindfulness. Every Friday, I talk about different ways to be mindful and different techniques to be mindful, because that's all part of being aware and being present. And she calls it paying attention. You're calling it being mindful. But it's that presence And like I said, I don't remember if I said this in last week's episode or if I said this on another episode when I was talking about Pema Chodron's quote, which is the only definition of hopelessness that I can get behind, which is hopelessness is the release of all hope for an alternative to the present moment. And I love that because that means that you're not going, what if? You're not going, why am I not getting this? Why did someone else get it? All you are is being present where you are. And that is really singular and a really beautiful experience, which I admit doesn't happen often to me, but it's something that is a practice that I do every day. And I try to remind myself of when I meditate, when I do yoga, etc. So if you are looking for a good definition of being present, that's one to look at, one of Pema Chodron's phenomenal quotes. Alrighty, cool. Alan, why don't you tackle this next if you'd like?
I got a little lost. Are we talking about hopelessness? No.
No, we're talking about paying attention and being present and allowing skepticism to fall away, because when you're present, you can actually see the synchronicity begin to work in your life, kind of like writing in your father's voice, kind of like, you know, that voice telling you to write a little bit more. Those things starting to happen, there's a tendency to go, oh, what is this? And be skeptical about it instead of embracing it and riding the ride and seeing where it takes you.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, it feels like what she's doing, and I don't know if you said something like this, but she's just, we're learning different lessons that are coming together, right? So, like, set up boundaries, pay attention. And I think you're right to keep nailing on this, Sergio, because I feel like that's what the artist date is about, is paying attention. Be by yourself and just pay attention. And I feel like what we do as artists is we look and we see something a certain way, and then we share that vision of something, right? And that's why it's so unique to us. This is how we see these things, and this is my specific view of it. And there's a resonance in there because we all have similar views, but maybe we're seeing it like slightly askew, a degree or two off from where we've seen it before, and now we're going, oh, I haven't seen it like that before. This is amazing.
Right.
And I think that's really cool. And I think once you start really looking in and looking at stuff rather than letting the brain be like, what are you doing? That skepticism does fall away, right? Or like you're tuning in, and so you can tune out that skepticism almost. Tune in and tune out. I don't know. That's the short version.
That makes a lot of sense. Alrighty, cool. Megan.
Yeah, so this section of the book I thought was just really, really beautiful, the way she wrote about her grandmother's letters and everything, and how she realized eventually that all the little details that she thought were kind of extraneous at first were really how her grandmother was sort of processing all of these much bigger traumas going on in her life, and how she was finding, if not happiness, like a certain kind of delight in the world around her. And I think that as creative people, it's so important to have the space in your brain to sort of notice those little things, because that's where the specificity of you as an artist comes out, and the things you specifically notice. And that's something that only you can do, you know, noticing things exactly the way you do, and talking about them and thinking about them, and then translating them in is something that only you can do in your voice. And to me, that was just really, really profound, because I think that's something that hasn't always come naturally to me, taking the time and the space to notice those things. And I think when I do get into that mold, that is kind of when a lot of that skepticism can fade away a little bit, and there's more room for me to focus on the things I really want to be doing. And
I love that, and I love her that section about her grandmother and how, she's processing grief, but it's also she's paying such incredible attention to the little things, but those little things give her such reward. And, you know, in the book, she has a Rilke quote, and that is, the reward for attention is always healing. Ultimately, it's the pain that we are all unutterably alone. And that sentence is both incredibly uplifting and also full of desolation. and yet being present in the moment allows you to heal that feeling at least a little bit, according to her, and it's possible according to the rest of us. Alrighty. Okay, so Tommy, importance of paying attention is being aware right now. That's what mindfulness is all about. That's what everything is all about as far as attention and awareness and mindfulness is. It's being here, being in the now. There's a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman, and long and arduous explanation for what it is, but this young man has a wise teacher, and the teacher asks him, "Where are you?" And the answer is here. And he says, "What time is it?" And he answers, "Now." And then he says, "What are you?" And the answer is, "This moment." And when I read that, it just blew me away, because yes, that's the key right there. It's being present right here, right now. Wherever you are is here. What time is it? Now. What are you? I'm this moment. And I love that notion and have kept it with me since I first read the book 30 years ago or so. So there's a lot to this.
That's
and
amazing. It's
I would love
really grounding to think that
What?
way. Just to think that I'm in this moment, and then it's like, okay, here I am.
Yeah, that's it. And it's I highly recommend The Way of the Peaceful Warrior to anyone and everyone. It's a powerful book. All right, so let's talk tasks. The rules of the road. Would we like to read those, or is it okay to skip the rules of the road? What are your thoughts?
We can skip them, I think, and people can read those on their own. But unless you want to,
Okay.
let someone.
No, it's fine. So in there, she talks about, in order to be an artist, I must. And she goes through what she believes are the rules of the road to be an artist. Feel free to add your own. That's one of the things that, having gone through the book, this is my third time going through the book, I've added things, I've marked things out, I've gone, yeah, this doesn't feel right for me. It is okay. If something doesn't feel right for you, cross it out, add something that does. Bear that in mind. So let's talk about the tasks. Now, there's a read the basic principles to yourself every day. That was one of the tasks. Did anybody do that?
So that was actually something I wanted to bring up or to ask. That test didn't really have much effect on me when I would read it. Did anyone else? How did everyone else feel about reading the basic principles every day?
I didn't read all of them. I read the ones, like, remember how we talked about which ones resonated for us? I asterisked the ones that resonated for me, and I only read those.
I should have did that.
So that's what I did. I kind of went, yeah, the other ones don't speak to me. I don't need them. I will focus on the ones that spoke to me. And so that's what I did. And I like them because they speak to me, because it reminds me. It's kind of like the what are you this moment? Where are you here? You know, all of that is something that works for me. And I'm a practitioner of keep the best, lose the rest. So that's what I did.
I did exactly the same thing. I just kind of transcribed and translated a little bit my favorites into my own words a little bit. And those are the ones that I repeated every day. I did not do all of them.
And yeah,
Alan?
I read them like once or twice, honestly, and I liked reading them. I just got to the book late, and I was like, "Oh man, I forgot that part." And as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oops, that's not something I did." And I'm trying to let myself, not have to do everything and not be. I think I've said this before, but not. I'm really trying to make a conscious effort not to judge my process through this and how I'm doing it, and just let myself do what I can and get back into it as much as I can when I can.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But, Sergio, how do you feel about those answers?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is that I'm just going to read the ones that really stuck out to me, the 2 or 3 that really resonated with me. I think in the future, if I continue doing that, are the ones that out. And I like how Megan kind of just rephrased it her own way, so she can just say it to herself. I think that's a good idea as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. For the next task, the 5 major activities, what was interesting to me about this was like, yeah, I went through that and I saw that I've been spending an awful lot of time on the podcast because there are a lot of things to have to do for the podcast. And then I spent a fair number of hours this week with a bunch of crazy makers, and I have the words "I will fix your problems" tattooed in an invisible ink on my forehead. And so I get random emails from people who don't know me who say things like, hey, I know that you're a writer and I need the name of a good editor for memoirs. Can you give me names? And I'm like, I don't even know you. Who are you? Hello? But that happens to me, and it happens to me a lot. So a lot of what that task was, I spent a fair amount of time answering other people's questions, and I'm really realizing that's nice of me, but it's not required of me. And so I have to curtail that, and that's something, in order to do that for myself, that I need to be aware of, and only do those things that I feel like I have time and energy to do that are not getting in the way of anything else. So there's that. Okay. Anybody else on that task number 2?
I did this, and then I put it. I drew my circle on the iPad, because I figured I'd be able to find it easy and I could come back to it easy. But it's really sloppy. But I found that a lot of what I'm thinking about now is this. And then I've been doing a yoga challenge, so that was part of my time. And I think I realized that I want to spend more time with friends, but maybe that comes later in this task list.
Well, she said friendship and play is there. That's like play and romance, and then friendship. They are in there. And so if you are, if you're finding that like, oh, there's a lack here, that's a really good way of seeing it in that circle. Because I did my circle too, and I'm like, yeah, I want to see friends more. But I wonder how much of you not seeing people as much as you might want is COVID related. Like, are we living in weird times right now, or is there some?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I feel that way too. I'm like, I want to see my friends, but it's a lot tougher than you might think, because we're living in some unprecedented times. So your point is well taken, and I am there with you. All righty. Megan, what are your thoughts on that task?
Honestly, my circle was pretty lopsided, and that was, I got some thinking to do about that. That's all I'll say about that for now.
Okay. No, that's great. And that's something like, how satisfied are you? And if you are not satisfied, then, like she said that early, I think in the book, like with morning pages, there's only so long you can find yourself writing about the same damn thing before you realize you just have to do something about it. And it's the same kind of thing. Like when you see that circle and you're like, oh, I'm not seeing people I love enough, or whatever the thing is that feels shortchanged. You once you see it in graphic representation, you have to kind of do something about it, or at least it gives you food for thought. All righty. Anybody else want to chat about that before we move on to the things that you love doing?
We can move on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So did anybody write those things out?
I did.
Yeah.
How was that? And what are your thoughts on sort of when the last time you did it, and which ones, if you want to share, did you decide you want to do this week? Megan, why don't you go first?
Well, I realized that a lot of my things are, most of them are things I haven't done in years. And I think it's because I've had pretty intense focus on work, for a while now. And part of that is also pandemic related. A lot of things I really like doing are things that are really hard to do when things are shut down and, you're worried about, COVID and everything. So,
sure.
One thing I decided to do this week, which I haven't done yet, is that I don't feel comfortable yet going back to the salon to get my hair done. But before I leave my parents' house and go back to New York, I want to get my mom to cut some of my hair off, because it's just getting so long and ragged, and I think I would just feel a little bit better in this sort of in-between time before I'm ready to go back to the salon if I had like less of weight on me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a great one. Like, oh yeah, I can do that kind of self-care, and it doesn't have to be curtailed by COVID, because someone else can take scissors and sort of trim my hair, and it feels lighter and better and all of those things, which I think is awesome. I did them, and I have a bunch of stuff, and I have to say that a lot of the things that I love doing, I do. Right.
That's awesome.
And I don't know if that makes me a particularly decadent person or whatever, but like I put down dancing and walking and traveling and going out to eat, singing, petting my cats, writing, being in the water, going to a bookstore and browsing, wandering the streets of New York City, going to shows, blah, blah, blah. And I thought about it and I'm like, yeah, about the only thing that I haven't done for a while, I haven't played euchre, which is one of my favorite things to do. And I haven't taught people how to sing, like people who want to learn how to sing. I haven't had a singing workshop for a while. So now I'm like, well, even though that's work, it's one of my favorite things to do in the world is teach a group of people who are afraid to sing how to sing so that they're like, yay. And so out of those things, like I love to take photos at night. I want to take photos of the next eclipse. So yeah, I haven't done that for a while because we haven't had a big solar eclipse since 2017. And I feel like that's okay. But the other stuff I do. I actually make time for all of that in part because life is for the living, right? So if I want to go see an Alfred Hitchcock movie or if I want to watch one at home, by gum, I'm going to make myself some popcorn and I'm going to go watch an Alfred Hitchcock movie because that's one of my favorite things to do. So I will do that, or I will drive to the ocean if I want to see the sunrise because why not, right? If I can, I'm going to. And luckily, the things that I love doing don't require a lot of people. But if the things that you love doing require a lot of people, like for example, I have friends who are big time square dancers and they square dance virtually. They actually square dance on Zoom. You will find a way. If it's really important to you, figure out a way to do it that is safe, that doesn't put you in any danger, like with COVID or whatever. There are ways to do that. And that's something for us to think about as we go through this process. And if you're listening to this as you go through the process for yourself, that a lot of the things that you love to do might not be accessible right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't do some form of it and get yourself into that space regardless. Alrighty. The 10 tiny changes, that was the next task. The 10 tiny changes, the things that you would like to do this week that are slightly different, that would be a change for you. Did anybody have any particular ones that you want to talk about that you made?
10 tiny changes, yeah.
For me, I think that was probably one of the harder tasks. Not really hard to write down things that I wanted to change, but I guess just seeing the ones that were most important. And I guess I'll just bring up two. One of them was that I would like to write more. And seeing that there was like, kind of hard to see because I feel like that's the one thing that I've been trying to do the most, especially this year. With the initiative I've taken in my creative endeavors. But I think what that meant was that, speaking of creative endeavors, like some of my creative writing, my screenplays and short stories have taken the back burner to some of these other things that I've been involved with. Not just this, but also freelancing, just small writing jobs that I do regularly every week and things like that. So that was one of them that I would like to write more. And then also another one that was really important for me on that list was that I need to call my grandmother more. Sometimes I feel like
I love that.
Sometimes I feel like such an awful grandson, and she reminds me. She never calls me awful, but she reminds me of how I don't reach out nearly enough. And so that's definitely for me not necessarily even a tiny change. That's something that I think is a big thing that I should do. It's just reach out to my grandmother more. I know not all of us have our grandparents with us, and may they rest in peace if that's the case. But yeah, I think that's something that I definitely want to write more and call my Gmom more.
I think that's lovely, and frankly, my grandmothers have both passed, and that's not a bad thing at all. They were terrible women, but I would say that I call my mom and I make a note. I actually put a little thing in my calendar that every Sunday morning I need to call my mom, and so that's what I do. I actually have a little alarm go off that goes, remember to call your mother. And that's how I call her once a week, is that it's not up to me to remember, because Google Calendar tells me that, it's 9 a.m., call your mother. And I love that. I love leaving my brain more free to be creative, because I'm not worried about the scheduling of things. And that to me is super important. Not the calling my mother is cool and I'm glad I do it, blah, blah, blah. But to have my brain free from remembering that stuff, and the guilt sort of about the fact that I'm not doing it enough or whatever just isn't there, because I have a little reminder. So that's my little piece of advice to you, if you feel like it. It's a pretty cool thing to do. All right, that's cool. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, thank you. So anybody else?
Well, I'll go, because that sort of dovetails into one of mine, which was, I would like to have a schedule for my work, the artist way, and writing is what I mean. So like, I want to create more of a specific schedule. And when you said like, oh, I just set my alarm for 9 o'clock, I was like, well, that's amazing. That means you have that time set aside every week for that purpose, and that's awesome.
I live by schedules like that. Yeah.
I definitely probably need more scheduling in my life, and that's it. The other one that came to me, I was like, I did this list and I wrote a few things, and honestly, I don't think I really got to doing any of them, but some of them are sort of long-term things, I guess. But then I was on Facebook, and somebody was like, I gotta learn Spanish. And I was like, oh my God, I want to learn Spanish. And they put some list to some teacher, and I was like, oh, it should be on my list. And I was like, do I really want it on my list? I always say I'm going to learn Spanish, and then I don't. And then I thought, hey, maybe now you can. Maybe now's the time. And I sort of had this acceptance that I actually could learn it, so I think that's sort of a little bit of the universe saying, don't forget this thing, because it's part of my heritage and I should know it, or I would like to know it. I would like to be more connected to my mother, my brother, my family, my cousins, and speak their language, or some of them.
I really appreciate that, Alan. Mucho respect.
Muchas gracias.
Yeah.
De nada.
Sí. Y yo puedo practicar contigo si usted quiere.
Qué bueno.
So, absolutely. I will totally. I can always stand to practice my Spanish. I love doing it. So, okay. Me, I get to, and that's another thing that I'm trying to do, is change the language between I have to and I get to. I get to do 2 episodes of The Vegan Life this week. That's one of my other podcasts, and that's a goal for me, is to do 2 episodes of that show. Nice. And believe it or not, I mean, I have a whole bunch of them. Like, I would like to go for daily walks, weather permitting. I want to meditate more successfully. I've been having a devil of a time meditating, just because too many things are going on inside my brain. Playing the guitar more. It's sitting here mocking me right now, because I haven't opened the case for months, and I really need to and want to. But honestly, one of the big ones is I want to reorganize my tea. I have a bunch of different kinds of tea, and I never know where anything is, so I have a tough time when I want a cup of tea. I have a tough time figuring out which tea to get, because I can't find the one I'm looking for. And the other thing that I want to do is I want to go on a writing retreat, and I don't know if that's going to happen this week, but I really want to do a day. My goal, my desire, is to go to Long Island, and by the end of the evening, I will be at Robert Moses Park and watching the sunset. But there's also a vegan massage therapist out there, so I want to make an appointment to get a massage, and then go to my favorite vegan restaurant there, and then find the closest library and go write for a few hours, like maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then go to the park, to the ocean, and watch the sunset over the ocean, and then head home. And that would be a perfect retreat for me. So that's a goal, maybe not this coming week, but next week. There you go.
I love that.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do, and if I can free up the time to do it, I aim to do that very thing. All right, cool. The last thing that she asked is, was there anything that surprised you about either the morning pages or your artist date? We may have already covered it. For me, it was that I started writing a book, is there anything that surprised you? Is there anything else that you want to say about what we've covered tonight? Because we've covered a lot.
No, I think as far as me, I think I covered that earlier. And just like you, where you started writing the book, I started that short story that I'm really excited about. And I'm not sure if that's because of the morning pages or the artist way, but it's neat nonetheless. How about you, Alan or Megan?
I think for me the most surprising thing, which I did mention a little bit earlier, was how morning pages and kind of the second half of the week really became a space for me to really start playing around with some new ideas instead of just a dumping ground for negativity. So that was really cool, surprising and really cool.
That's awesome.
Alan?
Obviously my dad writing to me, and then this really weird little extra half page that I did in the morning pages was really interesting. And then I think another thing that came to me, maybe when I was writing was, okay, here's the thing. So I was in the artist way, starting to read it, and I was like, it's not clicking for me. And then I just started letting myself write in the book and underline things. And I was like, this is really working for me. And I have never let myself really write in the margins of a book. And whenever I've highlighted a book, I've always felt like guilty about it. And I was just like, this is my book. I put my name in the front that I'm doing this, and I get to do whatever I want with it. And that was very exciting.
That's right. You signed the contract, right, Alan?
Yeah, I signed it right in the book. And I was like, this is for real. So now I get to make little notes. And some of it was just ideas that I was just writing in the margins. And one idea I had was like an art installation in a piece that I would have ever contemplated prior to this, and sort of like manifesting an idea in a sort of different space than I usually think of stuff. And it was this, I really loved the idea, and then of course I went through the cycles of like, well, what's the practicalities of it, but I still like the idea, and I may come back to it, but that was cool.
I hope you do. That would be super cool. No, it's really funny. I took this class at the Pit, the People's Improv Theater, took a stand-up comedy class, and had a great time. By the end of the class, we had 5-minute sets. Everybody had 5-minute sets. And one of the people in the class was this woman named Katie Chonakis. Kyriaki Chonakis is her name. And he said, Chris Griggs was our teacher, and he was like, yeah, if you want to do a show at the Pit, there are ways to get that to happen. And we all went, oh, that's cool. And she went, I'm going to put on a show. And so she went to the People's Improv Theater, and she got them to give her the big room, the big upstairs room, which is the biggest space they have, to do a variety show. And I participated in 2 of them before COVID shut us down, because we started this in January of 2020. And she just went, yeah, we're going to put it on. And we did. And that was that. And so I had not thought in my head that I would ever do stand-up comedy in that way. But by gum, within a couple months, I was performing to a packed house, doing stand-up comedy for a show that I was part of, and then playing violin and all these other things, and having a blast. And so I'm here to tell you that, practicalities be damned. If you want to do it, there are ways to make it happen. And so I hope you will, is the point of this whole story. There you go.
Thank you.
I love that. If there's a will, there's a way. And that sounds like such an exciting show that you're a part of.
That's awesome.
Alan,
it was super fun.
I'm sorry. But Alan, that art installation sounds really cool too. So
thank you.
Yeah, if you ever wanted to talk more about that with the group and needed any help, I'm sure we would love to support. I don't mean to speak for the ladies, sorry.
No, I agree. I would totally be up for supporting it. I don't know how I could, but I would be delighted to. So there you go. Because I've thought of doing art installations too with some of my digital art, and that's something that's on the back burner because I don't know how to begin. But that doesn't mean that I won't. And so I would be delighted to see what you're doing, so I can steal from you and see what worked for you.
Have any of you heard of the Meow Wolf Collective?
The what?
Meow Wolf. I know it sounds ridiculous. It's this art collective. I think it started in Brooklyn. I just watched a documentary of it this past weekend. I would highly suggest watching the Meow Wolf documentary. It's really silly, but it's essentially a group of artists that felt kind of alienated, or like they couldn't be in these it's in Santa Fe, excuse me, I don't know why I thought Brooklyn. In Santa Fe, they felt like they couldn't be a part of these bigger kind of art scenes, so then they started creating their own shows with these really wild art installations, and they ended up blowing up and becoming like a $50 million company at this point.
Wow.
It's really cool. Yeah, Meow Wolf. It's really silly though too. Just bear that in mind.
Silly is good. Silly is fabulous. You forget to whom I'm married if you think I don't like silly. All right, so cool. Once again, all three of you, Alan and Megan and Sergio, I'm so grateful to you that you are doing this process, because I think it's illuminating and inspiring and exciting and enticing and compelling. And I'm grateful to you for your thoughts and your ideas. Thank you so much for doing this. This is super cool.
Oh, I'm so happy to be doing it with you guys, and thank you for suggesting it, Zolda. This is great.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And next week, we are going to be meeting to talk about recovering a sense of power. That's week 3. So there's going to be more of that. Is there anybody else who'd like to say anything else before I say goodbye for the night?
Just thank you again.
Thank you, Isolda. It's been great.
Thank you, Zolda and crew, and thank you for all the listeners. So excited to continue this process.
Awesome. Thank you. And Alan is hungry and wants to go do yoga. I totally get it. All righty. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I would love, it would mean the world to me if you would review the show and let me and us know how you're thinking, what you're thinking, what's going on. Until next time, for the Innovative Mindset Podcast, this is Isolde Trachtenberg reminding you to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, remember to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind.